find that one thing and give your whole heart to it, and then go. Go. Be love. So here we are. Here we stand, a vessel to be used. Use me. Use me, oh God. Two powerful songs for today as we explore this. And there's no coincidence that someone that allowed herself to be fully used, like used up fully, decided to let her body go on Thursday and just go into that, what I call be free in that boundless love that we all are. And so I want to start with telling you a little bit about her, if you don't know, because she is perfect. She's a great representation of what we're talking about today. And if you don't know, Louise Hay passed away on Thursday. At the incredible age of 90, she lived if you're right, heal your own life, and we've used, millions of us have used her books to love ourselves more, to understand how so within, so without, even in the physical body. Oh my gosh, and so she died of natural causes. She just probably said at 11:52, here I am. Who knows? And so we celebrate her. And I want to tell you not only about her, but maybe someone after the first service said, I did not know that. So I'm starting off with letting you know that she was a Science of Mind minister. Yes. And she was a pioneering model of spiritual activism in our movement. She took the principles of healing that we teach, the principles of forgiveness, the principles of love, and everything we teach in the Science of Mind, and she took it beyond the walls of convention directly. She took it directly to those who needed it. She didn't wait for them to come to her. She actually took it to them. And she used our mental science principles, our spiritual principles to heal herself in her own healing of cancer. And yes, she defied ageism. She died at a young 90. And at the age of 50, she actually began what she calls, and people have called her humble publishing aspirations. And because of that one step, today there's this empire, and it's called Hay House. It's a self-publishing house that is now allowed for so many authors to publish their own books. And so she's going to continue through Hay House Publishing. They'll continue to provide inspirations to millions worldwide. Reverend David Alt gave a great synopsis of her life. She was his mentor. She married him and his husband, and it was all over the minister's listserv. And he said, she leaned in when others leaned away. She ran towards others when people retreated. And one of the great examples of this is in the mid-'80s. She started a weekly gathering, and it began to become affectionately known as a hayride. Now, I'm from Tennessee. I've been on some hayrides, but not this kind. And it started in her living room, this thing called a hayride. And the reason why it started is she one day got a pleading phone call from a man that was in her community that was diagnosed with AIDS in the mid-'80s. And Louise invited him and a few of his friends to sit in her living room and explore ways to comfort one another in the emotionally paralyzing beginnings of this epidemic. So think back to the mid-'80s. And by the next week, the group had tripled in size, and as it was the disease that was promoting it all. And so this group, this hayride, just grew and grew. They had to go to another location, and it grew and it grew. And she brought her whole self to this, and was such a beautiful spirit and all that. And the meeting never stopped growing. So she became this beacon of hope because she was willing to take that step. And in a time where it was a stigmatized health crisis. It was also in the mid-'80s, just so you know, that she established the Hay Foundation, and that is her nonprofit organization that encourages and financially supports diverse organizations which supply food and shelter. It provides counseling, it provides hospice care, they provide money to those in need. And the great news is that Louise Hay cannot die. She has now bequeathed her entire estate and all of her future royalties to the Hay Foundation. So see, this is one person, but where she touched so many lives that people talk about, especially the men, was it started in her living room. She has many, many quotes, as you all know, if you've read any of her books. And the one that I brought forward I really love today is she talks about how we are each to honor the entirety of our own journey. To honor the entirety of our own journey. Don't wish any of it away. And use it for the betterment of the world. Use it, this journey of ours that we're on. So, as you know, if you've been in this community and studied our philosophy, our faith, our teachings of science and mind, our teachings tend to especially focus on this interpersonal growth, that we each have a personal responsibility in our own lives. Some people don't like that, so they leave quickly. I don't want to be personally responsible. And that's okay. You can keep doing that. But to take this personal responsibility, to understand and to know this ancient wisdom that the power is within. It's not without. That the kingdom of heaven is within. And we can use that power. And we can unfold our lives beyond our wildest dreams, desires, wants, beyond what we can think today until we have more and more evidence that we can do this, and then that continues to grow. And it's so about our personal life. That's where we spend a major majority of our time. And that's great. So there is a power within that we can use. And sometimes we don't focus on, and there's a power within that can use us. And so that's what we're talking about this month. And the good news is as we continue on this spiritual journey and practice the teachings of science and mind, then it leads us each to this realization that not only are we one with this universal mind of creation, but it's also everything and it's everyone. So there it is. We go from the me to the we. So we are in this whole body. And so this whole body of God, this whole body of spirit, this whole body of source, the goo, whatever one chooses to call it, is the whole body. It's a wholeness. It has wholeness about it. And I love to use the metaphor because we can relate to it because we live with it every single moment of our life, the body, the physical body. And so using the metaphor for the whole body as the one body, we can understand that if you aren't free, none of us are. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But if one is not free, none of us are. And the quote actually comes from a woman that I discovered this week, Fannie Lou Hamer. I invite you to Google her. Nobody's free until everybody's free. She had tremendous impact in the civil rights, and I hadn't heard of her. So thank you, Fannie Lou Hamer, for bringing us nobody's free until everybody's free. So this key spiritual principle that we're focusing on, this one of wholeness, the whole body, this body of God, let's go back to it. Recently, my dad came into town for a big event. And so when he comes into town, I ask him to sharpen all my knives. And that's great. Someone in my household doesn't do well with sharp knives. But I'm going to use me as an example, as just this example for the body. So let's imagine that he sharpened my knife, and I'm now using it to cut something up, and I slash my thumb really bad. Okay? My thumb is bleeding, I'm in great pain, and now I can no longer use this thumb. Well, this is a portion of my body, right? Of the whole body, and now everything is impacted. It doesn't work the same anymore. And I'm sure you've had something going on with the body that you understand this. So now all of a sudden I can't use this. I can't pick up something that I was prepared to pick up, and you go about, et cetera, et cetera. Now all of a sudden this side has to, help compensate because this one's not getting enough. It's got to heal, et cetera, et cetera. The metaphor works in all things. It's one body. And sometimes, again, continuing on this metaphor, we may think that certain parts of the body are more significant than others. If the organ of the heart goes down, right? We sometimes think, well, there's some women that actually cut off their baby toe so that their foot can fit in those squishy, pointy-toed shoes with high heels. Go figure. But they do. But what they don't realize is that little pinky toe had its purpose, and now they're off balance. Everything counts in this body of God. And so now more than ever in this body of God, we need to go and be love because the world needs us. The body needs us. The brain is no more significant than the foot and the knee, because without the foot and the knee, the brain goes nowhere. We all need to go and be love in this body of God because it needs us, and we each have something to contribute. So we want to bring our passion, that which we are each individually passionate about, to this whole body. And that's what James O'Day talks about. He talks about this. He says, passion, to bring our passion. Passion ignites a precious spark that generates action. I like to think of this spark as simultaneously coming from spirit, psyche, emotion, and intellect. I believe that this super concentrated charge can enter into us and give us the energy to act in ways we never thought possible. We become instruments, a vessel. We become instruments of something larger than ourselves. Now, this is our time to go be love because the world needs us. But up till now, it has been other people's times. And we are standing on the shoulders of these people. And because the people have gotten this passion and this courage, we have benefited from it in this body. So I want to ask you to reflect just for a second. If you know in your own life right now that there's been someone, because of their passion and their spark and their courageousness, they've thought of something greater than themselves, and they have become love in action, right? Social or spiritual activists. And if you feel that you know someone that has done something prior to you so that your life is different, if you're willing and able, I'm going to ask you to stand. Just think about it. If you don't got it yet, it's okay. All right. Now, continuing, if you are a woman and you have ever voted, I'm going to invite you to stand because there have been women before us that we're standing on the shoulders of that have done this, so we can. Yes. Let's see. If you are currently high and dry and not sopping wet in your home or in this sanctuary, there have been people that were standing on the shoulders, primarily Native Americans and people that care for Mother Earth. We are high and dry. So if this speaks to you and you're willing and able, I invite you to stand. Now, Well, I could go on to lots more. And if you are an American in the United States currently, in this moment, we are all standing on the shoulders of someone that decided to be this love in action and to be courageous and to leave a continent that they had been currently on to come to this particular continent to forge the way for us because there was nothing here. And if you haven't stood yet, and this speaks to you, I invite you to stand. You see, we may not know who they are. We may not have seen them in action. We may not have read about them in our history books. They may not have made huge, mass media, whatever. But we all are standing. And we're standing on the shoulders of someone being willing to go beyond their own selves for the sake of us. Thank you. You may be seated. And so, one of the things I really want us to each leave with this morning is that every action matters. This sacred act of social engagement, every action matters. There's no action too small. Even in the circumstances where we could reasonably conclude that change is impossible. There's a beautiful quote by Rebecca Solnit that says, "Change comes not by magic, but by the incremental effects of countless acts of courage, love, and commitment. The small drops of water wear away at the stones and carve a new landscape." Think of the Grand Canyon. And sometimes by torrents of popular will that change the world suddenly. And it's consistent, incremental effects of all these countless acts of courage and love and commitment. So we are those small drops of water. So how, I've been asking myself this question, and Dr. Peter and I talk about this a lot. How do we find the strength to stay engaged in issues, big issues? Issues like climate change, for example. I'm just pulling one out today. Climate change, when we may not have the time to wait, it feels like anymore, for these small drops of waters to wear away the stone. I was looking this up, and in 2017 alone, there have been floods in Sierra Leone, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, and they've all been recent. They've come one on top of each other. And now the officials are estimating that 41 million people across India, Nepal, and Bangladesh have been affected. Do you know I had to search for that on my Facebook feed? It's just not there if you're a social media person. That's a lot of people. And as we know, as Dr. Peter already talked about in Houston, just in this last week, the first 5 days of Hurricane Harvey, it dumped 20 trillion gallons of water in South Texas. And yet every single person can make a significant difference on this topic called climate change, if this is your passion. Another book that I've been reading along with this that I really like, by Paul Loeb, it's called The Impossible Will Take a Little While. That's from a Billie Holiday song, by the way. There's an essay in there. It's all filled with essays. And there's this one particular essay, and it's called The Reluctant Activist. And it's this psychologist, her name is Mary Pfeiffer. And she describes in the moment in her life where she felt helpless when she learned that the Keystone XL pipeline was running right through her home state of Nebraska. You know the Keystone pipeline? I'm sure you've heard of it. Yes? Yes. Y'all with me? Okay, so here's Mary, and it's about to pass through her home state of Nebraska where she lives, and everybody around her, all of her co-workers, all of her family, everybody's saying, there's nothing that can be done. It's going to come through no matter what. And she was like, I don't want this pipeline through my state. So she took a radical action. It was radical. You want to know what she did? This one woman, she had a potluck in her living room. That's where she started. She had a potluck in her living room, and she gathered a few friends, and she said, we're going to do something. We're going to be love in action. And that little group started to grow quickly. More potlucks started to be scheduled, and they started to grow. And then all of a sudden, there were small town ministers from her town, business owners, ranchers, farmers, you name it. And then it started to grow nationally, because this is when we might start hearing about it. It started growing nationally. This was a few years back, okay? And it culminated from potluck to culminated at the arrest of more than 1,000 people outside of the White House that were wanting to pressure, at the time, President Obama to veto the pipeline. And because of that, he did. And that delayed it for 3 years. Okay? Now, that book was written a few years ago. I was curious what's happened since then. We know some things that have happened since then. But the interesting thing with all these drops of waters, I'm talking about drops of waters, the interesting thing through Standing Rock, all that stuff, is in July of this year, we're talking 2 months ago, the company that wants to build this pipeline, TransCanada, has not yet determined whether or not there's enough demand for the project. I didn't know that. So what they did in July, because they really don't think there's enough demand from their customers, mind you, not from us, from their customers to build this pipeline, because we know eventually profit, they decided to do this open ask. Are y'all interested? And this open ask lasts through September, this month. And all these drops of water are doing their thing. And our consciousness, you could start that, and they will, if there's not enough demand, it's not going to be built. Okay, so we're talking about, this is all related to like climate change. So we're going to see what the outcome of this Keystone Pipeline is. But again, thank you, Mary Piper, for having a potluck in your living room. Okay, there are stories upon stories where a small, and I mean a small group of people, we do not know how we touch people in our lives. A very small. There was another story of women protesting in the rain. There was only 40 women protesting, but Dr. Spock saw that on the news. And eventually, he decided to get involved with what he got involved in, because he thought, if those 40 women can stand out in the rain, by gosh, I can do something. We don't know. So what James O'Day is really inspiring us to do is, as we set out on the activist path, we bring our basic tools with us. And our basic tools are our gut instinct for justice, a little fire in the belly, and moral compass, and a kind heart, and of course the courage to act when that supercharged lightning of integrated passion illuminates the way forward. So it takes courage, and we've got to act. He also tells us that we do not know how the enactment of conscience by individuals in simple but daring acts of courage, selfless service, or the presentation of new ideas of justice and inclusion can herald the end of perniciously ingrained forms of exploitation and oppression. We have no idea. So every action we take matters. I want to tell you about another woman. Dr. Peter told me about her, and I said, well, I'm going to find out about her. I want to introduce you to Wangari Maathai. Oh, somebody knows her. Someone's clapping. Wangari Maathai. So Wangari, she is a Kenyan environmentalist who began a movement to reforest her country by paying poor women a few shillings to plant trees. She got this idea. She said, I'm going to pay you, the women of her village, to actually go out and plant a tree. Just plant a tree. There have been other people that do this, but so she went on, because of this, she went on to become the first African woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, Dr. Mathai, one of the most widely respected women on her continent, played many roles. She was an environmentalist, a feminist, a politician, a professor. I love this. She was a rabble-rouser. Any rabble-rousers in the house? Love those rabble-rousers. She was a human rights advocate, and she was the head of what's called the Green Belt movement. And this Green Belt movement she started it in 1977. So we're talking 40 years ago. 40 short years. And its mission, again, was to plant trees across Kenya to fight erosion and to create firewood for fuel and to give jobs to women. Plant a tree. She was in all her work, they say that she was comfortable in the gritty streets of Nairobi slums or in the muddy hillsides of central Kenya. She was comfortable hobnobbing with head of state, and she won that Nobel Peace Prize in 2004. Her Greenbelt movement has planted more than 30 million trees. Yes. Now, that's the Greenbelt movement that she founded. They have planted 30 million trees in Africa, and along the way, she has helped 900,000 women. And then, it doesn't stop there. The drops keep coming. She also, according to the United Nations, has inspired similar efforts in all the other African countries. So we don't know when we have a potluck in our living room, or like Louise Hay did, said yes to a little meeting in our living room, or we say, I want to plant one tree, what will happen? But we never will know, nor will we reap the benefits, and our children and our children's children, unless we start planting that tree. So we know that we have many, 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 many opportunities. Many opportunities to be involved. And we can be this instrument, we can be this vessel of something larger than ourselves. And so it's up to us to bring our passion to this whole body of God. And it's up to us to understand and to realize, because I personally sometimes get bogged down in this, I admit it, there's so many things I want to be about. But right now, my passion is the thumb. And I've got to trust in this whole body of God that you're the heart, you're the knee, you're the ankle, you're the bloodstream. You get it? You're the. You've got your passion. And you're going to take that up. I've got to trust that you're going to take this up. I know that there are people, and you know that there are people right now in this community that have been doing great work. And they took their passion, and it was something that happened, perhaps, and a spark happened. Tracy Brown. Okay, she was here. You know, what's mine to do? One thing, what's mine to do? Now there are thousands of people going, what's mine to do? What's mine to do? And that is getting us to think about, what is mine to do? I told you about Armando taking his spark, and he's helping getting jobs for people at Fair Park, right? So I know, and you know what? I think we ought to get together in some living rooms that you find out, well, this is my thing, and we've got 100 people that this is their thing, right? Well, that's my thing. Well, that's my thing. That's my thing. And we could get together. But we've got to be love beyond ourselves. There's a quote out of that book that important things take a while. And I want you to soak this up as best you can. We gain something profound when we stand up for our beliefs. Just as part of us dies when we know that something is wrong but do nothing. We would call what we gain radical dignity. We don't have to tackle every issue. But if we avoid them all, if we remain silent in the face of cruelty, injustice, and oppression, we sacrifice part of our soul. Indeed, when we keep on acting based on our conscience, we affirm our humanity, the core of who we are and what we hold in common with others. The one thing that I am impelling you, I'm asking you, I'm demanding of you is to find that one thing and give your whole heart to it, and then go. Be love. Because the world, by God, needs us in this body of God. Let us pray.
Go within with me. Take a breath. A healing, cleansing breath that moves us into our center. The center, which is the center of love. The center of life itself. It is said that God is a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. And so as we breathe into our own center, we breathe right directly into the center, into the heart of the divine reality. And as we breathe into that center, we breathe into that which connects us to each other, to all of life, to God. And so let us just breathe for a moment together. And you see, when we breathe together this way into the center, we are breathing with every person on the planet. We're sharing oxygen with all of life. And our breath is aligned with the heartbeat of the universe itself. For it is one. And we are one. And so as we breathe into this center, we can speak from this center, affirming this oneness, realizing this unity, and declaring the wholeness of the one body of God. And so as we do this together this morning, I affirm and declare for the wholeness of our planet, the health of our environment, and that everything that is needed is attracted, and everything that is not is released. As humanity awakens to the care, to the love of this beautiful blue jewel that we share. And because I breathe into this center together with all of us here, I speak the word of peace for humanity, a release of fear of each other. I speak this word of the peace of God that passes understanding. I release my need to understand those that are different from me. And I breathe into the center of peace, affirming, declaring, demanding peace to be revealed everywhere where there's fear, hatred, violence, or war. Because I breathe into the center of oneness, of wholeness. And as we breathe together into that center, let us affirm and declare that because we are one, that each and every human being, regardless of label, color, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, nationality, religion, ability, disability, is connected, is part of the one in this center that we've breathed into. And so I affirm and declare that the love that is the divine presence moves from each of our centers, including, embracing, connecting with the center within each individual being, within every person. And that as love is awakened, humanity is awakened to its spiritual magnificence, that we may each be love and see love in each other. And because we have breathed into our center together, and we stand at the center of life itself, these words are the heartbeat that emanates from each one of us, that lifts our spirits, that guides our actions, that informs our words, that leads the way, that we may go and be love, because we answer the call of life itself. And as we do this, we move forward with confidence and grace, with perfect trust, and with a divine knowing that God is present. Grateful for each other, grateful for the peace that you carry, grateful for the way that life moves in, through, and as each and every person who contributes. Grateful for the love that is welling up, not only in this sanctuary, but all across the United States and all across the globe. Every place where love wells up, God is born again into the world. And peace is assured. Wholeness is made manifest. And because we know this truth, we can relax into it, move in the world with grace and confidence, with trust. We let it go now. We let it be. And we say together, and so it is.